We've recently had a new effluent pump and irrigator installed, so I thought it'd be a good chance to upgrade my remote startup. And this is what I came up with. So the first system I built about 10 years ago used a tone signal decoder relay board. You can find these boards pretty cheaply on the internet. The main downside of that system is you had to remember to carry a radio with you, one of the radios with the keypads. So after a couple of years of using that system, I wanted something I could start and stop with my mobile phone. The garage door opener was connected to a PLC. So the first time you called the SIM card in the garage door opener, the PLC would hit reset start, then the next time you called it would hit stop. So for the updated remote control, I decided to use a control by web, and I went with the X410. With the 410 you get 4 inputs and 4 outputs. So other than electricity, with this system there is no ongoing costs and no subscriptions. The control by web device is connected to a wireless bridge. For those I chose the KuWFi 5.8 GHz. To give it a bit more weatherproofing, at the pump end I mounted one of the wireless bridges inside an old 20-litre plastic container. At the house side, the master bridge is just hanging in the window. So look on Google Maps, the distance is about 475 metres or about half a kilometre. The home bridge is powered off the switch with a 48 volt to 24 volt adapter. The switch is connected to the modem router. This is where you need to log into your router to make sure your control by web device's IP address has port access. Connecting to the X410's web server is pretty easy to do when you're on your home network. However, when you're out in the paddock, it's a little more complicated, especially when you have a dynamic IP address that can change at any time. To solve that, I've gone to noip.com and signed up for their free dynamic IP address service. So going to the web address you've set up with noip, that will then point you back to your home IP address. So with your router set up properly, that should port forward you to the IP address of the web server in the X410 unit. So back in the paddock, we'll move the effluent and then we can see how the remote start works. With this remote effluent control, I can also turn the fence unit on and off. Before starting the pump, I like to reset the counters. And then we hit start. So I program the PLC so if it gets an input from the 410 to start, it will output reset start. With this we're able to start the effluent pump and check that it's all running properly without having to leave the paddock. Inside the trailer there, being towed by the irrigator, is a Salcom telemetry transceiver. So after every one rotation of the wheel, a piece of metal there triggers the limit switch, which then turns the Salcom unit on, and that transmits a series of numbers over telemetry. That's then received by an identical Salcom unit back at the pump. If it doesn't receive a signal after a couple of minutes, this is what turns the pump off. So I've hooked into the 24 volt input that's coming into the Unitrunks JZ20 PLC. So my remote control shows every time a signal is received, and also counts the number of pulses. So So knowing that the wheel circumference is 127 centimeters, I can calculate how far the irrigator has travelled on each run. I've also set it up to count total pump runtime. It also sends me an email every time the pump starts or stops. So inside the box we've got mains power coming in, which runs over to the 24 volt power supply. We've got 240 volts going up to the relay board. From there it goes across to the socket, and that's what the fence unit is plugged into. We've got 24 volts going up to the X410, 24 volts to the PLC, 24 volts to the power over Ethernet for the wireless bridge, and 24 volts for the relay. So inside the new Effluent pump setup, I've just hooked into the start, stop and reset buttons in the door. So over here I've just hooked into pump run, which goes to the VSD, also the flash and light and the telemetry pulse. Setting up the web relay is pretty easy. You just put in the assigned IP address into the web browser /setup.html. So here you can set up all your inputs and outputs. So you set up your conditions. I've told it to email me when it starts and stops. This shows you what the control screen will look like when it's viewed on a web browser. This is the part where you design how the web page appears and what functions it has. So this is something I'll probably end up using almost every day, and it'll probably end up paying for itself multiple times over.